Okay, so tonight I want to talk about yet another controversial video. This one's high on most people's list of most disturbing. Um, so this is the latest in my series, Extreme / Forgotten. I think it's number 22. And basically, to reiterate real quickly, I've been talking about films that are in some way extreme or taboo or weird or fringe or out of the mainstream that, to me anyway, that have not received a mainline North American Blu-ray release, even as Blu-ray is peaking as a medium of choice for us who still collect physical media. And that's really a shame. There have been several Blu-ray releases of this particular item, but none have been a straight up North American Region A, Region 1, Region Free release. And it's been very elusive on free streaming until recently. So our good friends at Tubi, I mean, I don't know them personally or work with them, so I don't think I'm getting kickbacks, because I name drop them and review things on their site so often. But Tubi has been a kind of go-to source for me for movies I can't find anywhere else, especially extreme and underground and bizarre films, foreign films, and just some crazy shit is out there, and Tubi always seems to snap it up. This film was gifted with a remake 7 years after its release due to its sheer infamy, and I guess the idea that, hey, we can parlay this name recognition, notoriety into some quick bucks. And I'll get into all that later. But anyway, the remake was on Tubi for some time, and that's actually, I believe, where I first watched it, unfortunately. But I am glad, because now I can speak about it authoritatively, albeit not positively. But anyway, a couple weeks ago, I as I do every so often, I double checked to see if the original film was on Tubi, and there it was. So now you can see on Tubi the film Martyrs. I believe his name is Pascal Laugier, the director. I have some cheat sheets. They're digital. In this case, I finally upgraded my phone because my long-suffering Samsung S7 died after 4.5 years of brave and bold service to me after much abuse. Pascal Laugier, I don't know a lot about him, but he wrote and directed this film, Martyrs, in 2008. It was released in France, September 2008. September 3rd. That was my late father's birthday. Under the sign of Virgo, and it was distributed by the Weinstein Company and Wild Bunch, and I know Wild Bunch is some kind of international indie company that's helped fund a lot of stuff. I used to kind of know about them, but now I've kind of forgotten who owns them or what their story is. But they're imprimaturs on a number of films that I've watched over the years. Likewise, Canal Plus or Studio Canal. I think everyone who collects films knows Studio Canal. They're one of the world's greatest patrons of film. They've helped fund numerous great films from all over the world. Of all different sorts, providing completion funds and distribution assist. They're pretty invaluable. They're one of those companies, I guess, like Gaumont. That's another one that comes to mind, that a lot of the stuff that I've seen, I would not have seen if not for these companies making them possible. It's a totally different network than Hollywood, put it that way. Ironically, the North American distributor of Martyrs was the Weinstein Company, formerly known as Miramax. Well, they splintered. There was Miramax and there's the Weinstein Company and Genius Productions or Genius Creations or whatever, because Harvey Weinstein, as we know, is an extremely modest and humble gentleman who especially holds ladies in high esteem. But anyway, Weinstein's kind of, it's a taboo thing now. The name itself has a stigma, I guess, and rightfully so, due to Harvey's antics, if you want to call them that. He's like the the Jeffrey Epstein Jr. Of indie filmmaking production and or film production, because he has done a lot of things that weren't indie. The Weinstein's also made it possible to see a lot of great shit that I like. So yay, good for them. I'm not one of those people who throws the baby out with the bathwater. I didn't start boycotting Weinstein Company, Genius, whatever, and Miramax when Harvey was busted. It's just not going to happen. This stuff is way more complex. The line between one man's mental illness and exploitation of others and perversions. There's a long road between that and me watching the film at the end of the day that he had some involvement with. So I accidentally cut myself off there for a second. But now that I'm using this new video editor program, I can stitch these things together, whereas in the past, I was utterly technically inept. And it's relatively simple stuff to a lot of you guys, but that's just how I'm not a Luddite, but I definitely have blind spots when it comes to certain technologies, applications. Once I master them, I'm good, but getting there, but as I was saying, Weinstein did not distribute. Weinstein Company, whatever's holding that, what's left of that silk purse, did not distribute Martyrs on Blu-ray. I think they had something to do with the North American DVD release, and there was a couple of different releases. There was, of course, the uncut one, which most sane people want to see the uncut version of a film like this. I don't want to know why you'd want to see the uncut version, but that's another philosophical rabbit hole that I've explored on other videos. Some people will do, there are levels of discomfort, and they vary from person to person. Your mileage may vary. In the case of Martyrs, there are a lot of levels. There's a lot of levels of discomfort, and most of them are breached. I would say it's one of those films that provokes almost as strong a reaction when in circles that I've engaged in with film viewers as a Serbian film. Now, I reviewed a Serbian film a long time ago on a video alongside last year in Marienbad, which had just come out on Kino Lorber. And my review of a Serbian film, well, I justified it by reviewing basically what I purchased at one of my workplaces, which dealt in used collectibles, a cut version of Serbian film, cut by a minute. That's what I still own. And eventually, yes, I intend to upgrade. And if the embargo or whatever is lifted on eBay, I'll just sell this copy. I know for a while it was banished from eBay because of strange complaints, or maybe not so strange. But anyway, that Serbian film is it was one of my early, very kind of primitive, stiff videos. I watched it recently. It holds up all right. In a way, that stiffness was good. I didn't make a lot of humorous asides or ramble too far off topic. Maybe I was just kind of petrified with nervousness. But that's become one of my most popular videos. It has several thousand views now, because that's always going to be a movie that people want to read about and hear people's opinions about, whether they agree with them or not, and check it out maybe for themselves. So this movie is in that tier, a film. However, unlike a Serbian film, it doesn't. Martyrs does not succumb to a lot of the very facile critiques that you can aim at a Serbian film, which I did cover in that long ago review, such as some of the things are so over the top that they're cheesy, they're ridiculous, therefore you can't really be genuinely disturbed. That's one point of view. Then there's the camp that says it's really not that extreme, man. you know, people who want to go and masturbate to the Vomit Gore trilogy and the August Underground trilogy endlessly. And that's not a knock on any fans of those particular series. I am not one. I have never completed beginning to end any of those 6 films, and I really have very little interest, to no interest in doing so. But there are people who feel like that kind of stuff, things like Koji Shireishi's Grotesque, those are levels where you're like, yeah, man, this is it. I could just jerk off to this all day. Okay, so that's your own mental issues that you have to cope with, and the loneliness of your own life. If that's how you feel about it. I've known people like that. Most horror fans are not like that, but I've known quite a few. If you can only watch films released by Unearthed Films, then you're jaded. You know, if that's the only thing that can stimulate you. But as I've reiterated many times, I will watch just about any film along those lines. I like testing myself. I have an insatiable curiosity. I'm fascinated by things that repulse me. You know, I'm fascinated by true crime and things of that nature, and real death and things of that nature. You know, I love the old Mondo movies and films that have riffed on them, such as one of my favorite films, Cannibal Holocaust, which I've done 2 videos about. The latter that I did last year for Halloween, it has garnered 8,000 views and a few dozen likes, and it's one of my more popular videos. It was like a double feature with the much tamer Cannibal Apocalypse, which I love greatly more than Cannibal Holocaust. So, you know, my point is that Martyrs is the kind of film that shows up on all these lists online where everyone tries to outdo each other and get more shocking. People on boards like the Unearthed Film. And I want to make clear that I'm a member of the Unearthed Films Facebook group. I've had some of their product before. I've owned some of it on DVD. I have friends who collect it. I definitely do intend to one day get and add to my library the uncut, super duper deluxe Serbian film. I just think it's something that I personally, it's an experience that is unique unto itself, regardless of what anyone thinks about it, pro or con, or what their reasoning, what angle they're coming at it from. I named a couple a minute ago. It doesn't matter. With a Serbian film, though, yes, it's more disturbing to me because it's that juncture point of extreme sex and extreme violence. And that's a personal place where I'm squeamish. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one. But, you know, it's an area of discomfort. Martyrs does not really go into the sexual realm of sexual exploitation, rape, sexual torture. Films like the aforementioned Grotesque by Shireishi, yeah, it goes there, it goes everywhere. Grotesque is the kind of film that I would not own in my library. I find it distasteful. I'm not saying don't watch it. I'm a fan of Koji Shireishi. I think his found footage films are really interesting and fun, and he's a very intelligent, witty guy. But I think Grotesque was a road he wanted to explore, and he went down pretty damn far down it, about as far as one can go. And I'm not going to say he went too far, because that's just not the right criteria for these kind of films, really. That's very subjective, very contextual. So I feel as though Grotesque, though, it barreled past my own personal limits of acceptability. Would I boycott it? Would I say don't watch it for moral grounds? Would I say destroy the film canisters like I knew people who actually exhorted members of one of my Facebook groups to do in the case of a Serbian film? Hysterically, we should destroy this film. This film should be destroyed. So when I hear people who claim to be into art and extreme art and weird and taboo art and are all gothed out and pierced to the max and tattooed and say, I want to destroy a Serbian film, you know, I have to think that's hit that little Puritan button, you know, that's still in that person, you know, and They haven't evolved. They haven't evolved to a sane level where they can go, I reject this on personal grounds. I find this distasteful and horrendous. End of story. You can do whatever you want with it. But the people carrying the torches, hunting the witches, I'll never be down with that mentality. Now, as far as Martyrs goes, there was a time when I was a little more engaged with some of the extreme film fandom. Oh, what I was going to say is I'm a member of the Unearthed Films group. I'm Facebook friends with Steven. My brain went blank. Steven, the guy who owns it, great guy, and his second in command, Susie. Yale, I consider a friend. She's very passionate and knowledgeable film lover of all different genres. She just happens to enjoy that area the most. They do a great job. They perform a valuable service in a culture like ours that is spiraling into censorship madness. And to me, they're brave. At one time in my life, I said that I felt porn performers and filmmakers were some of the bravest artists living, to a friend, and they were like, "You really?" Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Now, due to the ubiquity of porn on the internet and cheap porn, I don't know. Maybe it's not that brave. Maybe it's just like degraded and like I don't give a fuck anymore, and I want to make a lot of money fucking. But it doesn't matter what their intent is. The fact is, repercussions can ensue. Look at a Serbian film where the sex is simulated and the extreme sexual violence is simulated. It's brave discussing, much less depicting these things, even fictionally depicting, because I'm not going to watch them for real. I'm not one of these cats who's going to go out and go, I got to see Daisy's destruction. Now, will I read about Daisy's destruction? Do I want to know, does it exist? What's it like? What happens in it? Yes, I do want to know. Do I want to actually watch it? No. Have I watched films that are almost that notorious that float around the internet? I have. I have chased down a few in recent years, and they were unpleasant experiences. I don't feel scarred for life by them, but Daisy's destruction, I think, would scar me because, again, it's that combination of that sex violence nexus. It's not just a dude killing another dude on camera in order to prove that snuff films are not an urban legend. I used to believe they were an urban legend too. There are some great books arguing that point, such as Killing for Culture and Mita's Murder. Mita's Murder, Nikita Brotman, Creation Books. I think it's been reprinted by a different publisher. Creation went under. They did a wonderful line in the late 90s. My copies of those two books have been read so many times, they really need replacing. Killing for Culture is an indispensable history of death film from Mondo to Snuff. That's actually the subtitle by Karakees and Slater. And those are the kind of books that got me, juiced about finding this stuff, the forbidden element. And not only films that are underground, but films that incorporate those elements within a mainstream setting, like Paul Schrader's Hardcore or Joel Schumacher's 8mm, which is much less successful to me than Hardcore, or that it could have been, but Schumacher's not that gifted. But Schrader did a great job, and it is subversive without being, super graphic and having massive studio distribution and George C. Scott starring it at the time. I don't think that kind of situation would exist today in Hollywood. 8mm might be the closest we'll have to such a film, but again, to me, there's some interesting bits, but it's a bit watered down. So I'm all over the map here. Sorry, I'm out of practice here with this. To try to home in on what I'm trying to say is that, once again, in this whole annals of films that deeply perturb people, Martyrs is usually in the top 10. Sometimes in the top 5. On almost every list that I encounter, whether it's some clickbait morons list on the internet or a well-researched scholarly piece for, say, a magazine like Diabolique. I'm not saying they've done that list, but the people who write for and publish Diabolique, several of whom I know, go into those areas from time to time. So I could expect a really well done, serious piece of that nature by a writer like Heather Drain or Kat Ellinger. Heather's a good friend. Her husband's had surgery this week. I hope you both are doing okay. If by some bizarre chance you'll see this video, hang in there. I love you both. So uh, I wonder what they think of Martyrs. Martyrs was shown to me originally by a cat I used to run with for many years called The Marksman, otherwise known as Mark Baranowski, musician and filmmaker and general kind of jack of all creative trades. Totally independent cat. I met him in the late 90s. We have kind of embarked on divergent paths, so to speak. I mean, there's no enmity on my part toward him, and if there is on his part, that's his problem. If there's not, cool. I don't see the twain meeting again. Sometimes people evolve and change, and shed each other for whatever reason. It happens. It took me many years to accept that such things happen, even with husbands and wives. So Marksman and I used to have these film festivals at his house on the weekends, and he would show me. He had a huge library of extreme films and horror films. He was a go-to guy. He was the guy who collected all the new unearthed product as soon as it came out. You would buy it either on DVD or Blu-ray. Usually, whatever was available and/or least expensive, or the best deal overall. If the Blu-ray had features that he deemed mandatory to check out, then he would go with the Blu-ray. Of course, I quit collecting DVDs a few years ago officially, and I'm selling almost all of them. You can check out my eBay store. I'll put the link below. I'm selling a lot. I only buy Blu-ray now, and hence kind of the beginning of this channel. And as everyone who's watched this channel probably knows and has been around me for a while, at least within the last year, knows that I've had no money to buy any Blu-rays. I've bought a small handful in the last year, and I've had to pay on installment on all of them on my PayPal credit. Everything else has either come from my library that I previously owned before embarking on this channel, or was donated by generous channel patrons, which you can become one too if you want. Feel free to like and subscribe this video. That's very important because the algorithms here are brutal, especially when controversial things are breached, usually politically, but you just never know with YouTube. You never know who's going to be offended by what, and we've got to be kind of ever vigilant. We got to have each other's backs as far as censorship. That's why I support independent media on YouTube and social media wholeheartedly, and I feel good to be kind of part of it, even though I'm not addressing head on the state of the world daily and weekly and politics as they currently exist and are killing all of us, as a lot of people I follow do. It was my dream to have a show called Things That Need Be Said, where I did that regularly for a lot of reasons, maybe my own cowardice in a way on one level, but for a lot of reasons I scuttled that idea, not permanently, but I've indefinitely postponed it. But if you guys follow me, you know kind of where I stand. I'm a far leftist, nonpartisan, radical dude. And hence censorship is anathema to me. It was in the 1980s when it was peddled by the neocons and the Republican Party, the religious right, and it's anathema to me in the 2020s when it's peddled by the liberal slash neoliberal quote unquote progressive Democratic Party lunatics, and who, for the record, are the ones currently running almost all of the country's government. So fair is fair. If we were in the business, not I, but if some folk I know who are inclined who are not leftists, were inclined to blame all of the society's woes in America on Donald Trump and the Republicans, okay, fair enough. Well, then I guess now we can blame it all on Biden and the Democrats, right? There's no difference. that's a whole nother ball of wax. This is not a political review, but there are political subtexts within this film that are really pertinent to what I'm talking about. So let's get down to it. Well, I'll just say this: who is most vulnerable in society, and who exploits who for what gain, who benefits, and you can trace almost every horrible act that governments perpetrate against citizens by discussing those ideas. And those ideas are part of the fabric of Martyrs. I don't pretend to be an expert on French politics now or in 2008. And I haven't read enough about Pascal to know what his personal inclinations are. So I don't come armed with a lot of the context and folderol and ephemeral trivia that I do in a lot of these videos, like those insufferable ones about Marvel. But this is the kind of film that attacks you. I didn't mean to say attack you, but that's what came out. It attacks you. It subverts you on a deep level. One thing that a Serbian film was given credit for was, well, it's really extreme and some of it's ridiculous, but it's so well made. It's kind of shocking. A subject matter would be such a well-made, seriously made film. The cinematography, the editing, the music, the acting, the general construction of the film cinematically. So I'm using that movie as a jumping off point, and in a way I'm contrasting it with Martyrs, just within the contextes that I've already enumerated. Other than that, they really don't bear any meaningful similarities. Of course, that film, a Serbian film, also is considered to be a film heavy with political subtext. According to the director, it's heavy with political text. And it's also about exploitation of the weaker in society and the weaker societies of the world by the more predatory class of capitalist cultures. On that level, it's interesting too. My ex-girlfriend, Admiliora, and I had an interesting discussion about that, and she had actually done quite a bit more research than I had on the director and the state of Serbia and what he was putting into it. And I'd read quite a bit, but she kind of had me beat. One of the many conversations I'm having with this person, and I'm like, she's the one. She's going to be my wife. But it didn't happen, alas. I still miss her. She's a brilliant woman. I hope she's well. But she had a similar take on this kind of stuff, and a similar adventurous viewing palette. And I have other friends who are like this as well, who I was not like romantically, sexually involved with, of course, but who have such insights. And I've talked about them many times on this channel, and I'll probably credit a few on this video. So I know by now you're like, get to the fucking point, Covert. Damn it. I didn't miss you after all, man. All you do is drone on and on. That may be true. This is one I've been wanting to do for a long time now, especially since seeing it again. For the last several weeks, I've been like, all this has been kind of fulminating in my brain pan. So let's get to it. Martyrs is a story of this girl named Lucy. And I'm going to have a little cheat sheet here. I might have mentioned this earlier. I got a new phone finally. I now have an up-to-date Samsung Galaxy. It's really super spiffy. So I can look things up pretty easily and quickly here without having to switch tabs and windows like I used to on here. So there are basically two main characters. One is Lucy, played by Mylène Jampanoy. I don't know. I'm pretty good with French pronunciations, but this one has me stumped. I've heard the singer Mylène Farmer called Mylène Farmer, but surely in French she's Mylène Farmer. But Mylen, we'll say. That's what it looks like with the particular little slash, a backward slash over the E. Mylene. She plays Lucy. So you don't really know a lot about these characters or their day to day lives, but what you do know is what happens to them in their youth and how they're dealing with it 15 years later. So Lucy as a child, little Lucy, or Lucy 10 on, or 10 years. It's played by Jessie Pham. So, uh, Lucy is a prisoner in this complex. You don't know where it is. It's cold and metallic and industrial. The sets are brilliant. The whole antiseptic, sterile environment. Uh, to me, it's like these are like cliche visual ideas in torture porn films, from Saw to Grotesque. But Martyrs, the production values are there. They really sell it, this austerity. And the coldness not only of the steel that surrounds the prisoners, but the coldness of the human beings that administer the torments. So basically, we start out with young Lucy, 10 years old, and she manages to escape. We don't really see exactly at first how she escapes, but she manages to get away. She's been sitting in a chair with just a hole in the bottom of the chair to relieve herself. She's just in a skimpy t-shirt and panties. She's got a shaven head that's growing back, hair's growing back. She's got a lot of cuts, cuts all over her, bruises. And she runs and she keeps running, and it's very horrific. So the way it's shot is incredible too. The handheld running camera running behind her as she's running towards us and just desperation, and the kind of off pans and that kind of verite. Again, these are kind of techniques that are so common now, and filtered their way up from the underground up to the mainstream to where they become cliche. But this is one of those instances where they're pulled off perfectly. They perfectly suit what they're depicting. And that's true of really the way the entire film is shot. And it's not shot in one particular fashion. Neither is it all over the map with different techniques like, natural born killers or something, assemblaged together, but assemblage, but, of Brachyian proportions. It's not like that. It's consistent, but it definitely has phases and tones, and the palette does shift and change a little as things progress, or for the main characters, I guess, regress. So 15 years later, we see a woman, and this is a great example of why so many mainstream movies irritate me in a very literalist culture we're in now, especially on the internet. This pedantic fanbro mindset that I'm always ridiculing. This over literalism. For instance, when I rewatched the remake, which I'll get to that, and compared the opening sequences in the original to the remake is struggling to convey in words and minutia of words what is happening, because the people who made I'll try to scare their name up here. They're not really worth repeating, but it took two people, I think brothers, to direct this mess. The Martyrs remake, it assumes that the viewer, us, we're as stupid as they are, the writers, film directors. Patrick Laugier, I'm sorry, that's not his name. Pascal Laugier, he does not assume that. He's going to give you everything cinematically, so that when there is exposition and there is context clearly laid out, it has way more power. And it's like suddenly you're not stranded in this desolate, horrifying landscape where you have to glean what the fuck's going on and why it's going on. You're clearly told, and the people who tell you are very intellectual, articulate, and very powerful individuals, and they are the tormentors. They are the uber capitalists, the aged, ancient, probably adrenochrome addicted ghouls who are carrying out these tortures on girls like Lucy and have been doing so for many years. They are obsessed with human torture. They're essential. I'm not going to jump too far around in the movie, though, knowing me, I probably will inadvertently. I'm not going to go linear either, though. Essentially, what this nameless organization of, like I said, rich ghouls, they are trying to tap into a very specific human experience, a very rare and unsettling and horrifying human experience. An entity, a body, a person whose physical being is pushed to the absolute edge of total agony and disintegration. And before that moment of release, of sweet death, they are glimpsing the beyond. And I don't mean they're watching the Fulci movie, but it is kind of the idea. They're seeing something from the beyond. And Fulci understood the beyond, and then capital T, capital B, the beyond. And they're the same thing, really. He just has his own idea of what the beyond is, and he kept it as impressionistic, minimalist, and surreal as possible, which makes that movie and its ending, the great classic of horror, of any cinema that it is, in my mind. And shame on The Void for taking the ending. Void was a decent movie, but as my friend Bill White said, you don't take the most incredible ending of a horror movie ever and replicate it and expect that to be your, what you crutch on, paraphrasing. So that's it. There's like something these people see, and then we are shown a lot of photographs, and they're not made for the film. They're not of fictional characters. They're real photographs of real torture victims throughout the last last 100 years or so. And some I recognized, some I didn't. A couple of them are very infamous that almost anyone would recognize, especially someone who is into horror or true crime or any of that kind of thing. I think the most powerful one is the one that I first saw in the early 90s. My former best friend showed it to me and explained it to me a bit, and it was in a few books. I want to say the image was used in Amos Vogel's Film Was a Subversive Art. My friend Tim McLean could qualify that. I may be wrong, but I did see it in a book around that same time, and I was reading books like The Torture Garden by Octave Mirbeau, which is about this very subject. And was written in 1899, a French book, a French novel, brilliant novel, made into a good but kind of inscrutable movie. Not worthy of the book. But I saw this image, and it was a Chinese tableau from the early part of the 20th century. I want to say the Boxer Rebellion. They do describe it in the movie Martyrs. And there's a woman who's like kind of tied to a stake, kind of, and she's been tortured, and like her breasts have been cut off, all the way down to where you see her ribs. Slices of her skin have been cut to that level at varying parts of her nude body, but prominently there. And on her face is that unforgettable look. And as the leader of these ghouls tells one of our main characters in the film, when they show them this picture, she was alive when this picture was taken. And that's exactly what my old friend told me when he showed it to me. She was alive when this was taken. And he was quite the scholar of such subject, He's the first guy who told me about Giderat, for instance. Giderat, I'm not going to say his name right. The child killer, that, rapist, French, who was a follower of Joan of Arc, I believe, oddly. That's the kind of imagery we're talking about. Now, going into Martyrs, I was expecting before I saw that image used within the narrative, which I recognized immediately, um, I expected Martyrs would go down that particular road of torture porn, like relentlessly, like a film like Grotesque does, of just, you know, constant mutilation. And as we know in horror movies, the human body in horror movies can take far more than a human. People don't get infected by open wounds all over their bodies. They can run around functioning, running from their tormentors with limbs hacked off. They're just kind of tourniquet it up, and uh, people can live through almost anything uh, in a horror movie. Mutilation, and that used to disturb me deeply. My aforementioned former friend told me I had mutilation anxiety, because I was disturbed and still am disturbed by such things and such images. And the first instance that he noticed me being disturbed about this was when we watched Dawn of the Dead together, and that was my first time I'd ever seen Dawn of the Dead, and the real Dawn of the Dead, not Zack Snyder's movie. And the stuff that happens to Roger, one of our impetuous and a bit annoying at times, but very empathetic and sympathetic main characters. He's mutilated twice, and it's really horrible, and it's really anatomically correct as to how he's handicapped as a result. And it's gross. It still bothers me. Not as much as it used to. I mean, I can like watch it now and it's on and it's cool, but I'd say the first 20 times I saw Dawn of the Dead, at least, I had an extremely hard time with those scenes. And now when Roger first gets bitten in the arm, and the zombie, they must have very strong teeth, these zombies. They bite through cloth, through flesh, through muscle, and then they're like pulling it to where you see the muscle coming out. Okay, so that's your fucking forearm. So your muscle is just been eaten. So you're not gonna be able to use that arm really that well ever again. With no medical, no surgery, no real treatment other than bandages and painkillers that you get in the mall pharmacy. I have yet to do a Dawn of the Dead video. I am saving it for a very special occasion. I have been this whole time. I've been doing this channel because it's my favorite horror film and my second favorite film of all time. But anyway, I was expecting this kind of mutilation, and in a post-Tarantino world, I will say, where torture is more of a plot device than it used to be, more graphic torture, more sadistic torture. It's more mainstreamed, and therefore horror movies and underground horror movies especially are even more extreme than ever, to where there's just a relentless amount of torture. And hence you get films that, to me, what I have read of and glimpsed, I'm not an expert, I haven't seen all of it, as I noted earlier, but like the August Underground films seem to be predicated on that. How can we torture as many people as possible in as many gruesome and horrifying ways as possible, defiling their bodies, physically, sexually, whatever, degrading. And I'm sure the Vomit Gore trilogy, from what I've read, is the same way, other than just the vomit part, which is real. Which is one of the major reasons I don't want to see it, because the vomit is one of my really weak points as far as being grossed out. So that's what these people are trying to do. This insidious, powerful, wealthy, elitist organization. Why do they want this information? Some of it is stated and the rest of it is implied, and there are parallels to it in reality. I mean, in 2008, no one heard about some of these, the main public in America anyway had not heard of a lot of these ideas, but they were floating around in conspiracy theory circles for a long time. With the 2016 election, a lot of this stuff became mainstreamed because of the way certain of the WikiLeaks material was interpreted. I'm not going to tell you what I really believe about that stuff or not. I refuse to wade into those waters at this time, not in this video. But I will say that I think there have been legitimate concerns that this kind of thing may actually be transpiring. And with the Epstein arrest and suicide, and the Ghislaine Maxwell arrest, um, and she came off very easy, believe me. Um, it's leaked into the public consciousness that this kind of thing is possible. The powerful preying on the powerless for various reasons, but one of them possibly being extended life, immortality, whether they're consuming adrenochrome produced by the brain of an infant. You can trace that back to the real life of Elizabeth Bathory and bathing in the blood of virgins, believing it will make her young. It's the same principle. It's just a human life. They're there for our subsistence. They're just servants. And this idea has gained some traction. So to see it in a work of fiction, a non-American work of fiction from 14 years ago, it's striking to me seeing it again. Because when I first saw it, I think it was 2016 when I first saw it. It might have been before the WikiLeaks allegations came to the fore, really. So now I can kind of take in the enormity of this concept. And of course, that's not a new concept in fiction. To have some superpower, super powerful, not like rays shooting from their eyes, but rich and powerful influence, political influence, cultural influence, consortium or conspiracy of the powerful to prey on the weak for whatever. Basically, to cannibalize the weak. Even Wes Craven's People Under the Stairs is allegedly a Reagan era kind of metaphor of that kind of thing. And, I think it's an apt metaphor for that era and what has ensued. Neoliberalism has caused the greatest transfer of wealth in human history to the smallest amount of humans walking the planet. And the misery and suffering of the vast majority of humans on this planet, yes, including America, has increased incalculably, though it has been calculated in percentages, and it's depressing. Stats are not good. So in a way, this political kind of subtext is inextricably linked with some of the stuff if you choose to interpret things and dig deep. And that's kind of how I approach movies in general, and these kind of movies. If there's something deep in there, I'm gonna poke at it, and I'm gonna, I'll form some kind of reasonable, to me anyway, opinion on it, and hopefully somewhat informed. Not saying I'm always right, but it's a fascinating exercise, and it's one reason I'm doing Blue Review. And like I've said many times before, and I hate to give her credit because I'm not happy with this person, but the last woman I was going to marry had told me she wanted to do a series, like a show of videos, doing this kind of thing, analyzing movies from these kind of angles and points of views. And I had that idea in my head prior to meeting her, but I never told anyone about it, really. It just was in my head. And so one of our many synchronicities when we met was, maybe one day we'll do the show. And in my mind, that meant we definitely will one day, But we see how that turned out. But I'm here and I'm doing it. She makes her own videos, and that's all good. But as far as Martyrs and what it means, it's one of those movies that the ending has been interpreted and reinterpreted and maybe misinterpreted a lot. So let's get into the meat of the movie. This is going to be a long video. I think it might be a two-parter, to be real honest here. Yeah, I fear it will be a two-parter. I could drone on this for a while. But I don't want it to be just droning. I want it to have a purpose. So if you haven't seen Martyrs, where to begin? I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video, and then I'm going to post part two. And part two, I'm going to dive right all the way into the story itself and all the pertinent points to me and pertinent, and then the remake and comparison contrast. So consider this, as with my Thor Love and Thunder two-parter, this is the introduction and context part. Next will be my discussion and verdict. Now, I don't plan on making this a regular format. It's just a format that, by necessity, I've stumbled upon because of my long-windedness and my lack of concision in conveying ideas. But there is a lot to unpack here. And there are people who can unpack it much quicker than me and more concisely. There are people who can unpack it because they've written it all out and they're reading it. I've got notes. I've got cheat sheets here in the form of, all these Wikipedia, IMDb type pages. But that's just to tell you, this is who made the movie. This is who the stars are. Give credit where credit's due. I have everything I need to talk about this movie right here. But I fear in contextualizing it, I've taken up a huge chunk of time. So this video may not seem satisfying to a lot of people, unfortunately. You may want to skip to video 2. I might put that in the notes. If you don't want to hear me drone on about all this stuff, skip to video 2. Maybe video 2 will be the review proper and verdict. So I'm going to go because I've got to stitch this together with the part that cut off. And then when I begin again, we're going to pick up with young Lucy, 10 on, 15 on later. And that's where our story goes. And the last point I was beginning to make, maybe an hour ago, about that is that in the remake, this stuff is treating you like you're a moron and smashing you over the head with it. In the original, you just watch it unfold. So you have the introduction, which I've described in detail, and then you cut to the present, and there's a woman, and it is Lucy as an adult, but there's nothing that says Lucy 15 years later. It's just like 15 on whatever the French word is for later. I can't remember. 15 years on. And I immediately, the first time I saw it, I didn't know for sure it was the same girl. But based on what little I knew about the movie, I thought it was fairly safe to assume. And I knew from the promotional materials that there's two friends who meet as children and are still friends as adults and bonded and needed and depended on each other as children and still do as adults. And that is the central motif, dramatic motif of the film and of its remake, though it's handled similarly but also radically differently in the remake, and I would say in an inferior, personally I feel, in a far inferior fashion dramatically. I have spoken. I'll be back with part 2. Rock on. Okay, I'm back with part 2. So here goes. Martyrs. When last we talked, which for you could have been a few minutes ago, or God knows, 8 days ago, I don't know. However long between these videos you're taking to watch them. You might not even have watched the first video. You may not even need to watch the first video. So let's just jump into it. As I stated, the movie opens in this cold, austere setting with this scantily clad, shaven-head girl, and she escapes from captivity at the age of 10. We don't know how old she is at the time. That's in the supplementary materials that I have at hand. Stated she was 10. Probably says it in the script, but it doesn't say it on screen because, as I mentioned in the last video, and I'll quickly reiterate, Pascal Laugier, he does not assume that you're a moron. He lets you start to put the pieces together from the beginning. This kind of storytelling I vibe with very heavily. I do not like the literalist mentality that has infested cinema criticism and fandom. You don't ever want to watch Twin Peaks with a literalist fan bro. What a nightmare. They can't even handle they can't even handle symbolism and hidden meanings and hints in a fucking Marvel movie, much less David Lynch. So here they might as well not even attempt. So unfortunately, there was a film made that catered to them called Martyrs. The original Martyrs was made in 2008. And as I stated in my previous video, in 2015, there was a remake released. A little bit of information on the remake to warm you up for the later excoriation of it that I didn't talk about in the last video. This is exclusive material, exclusive to part 2. You have to watch part 2. Anchor Bay Entertainment, of all organizations, was responsible for this abomination. They had purchased the international rights, and it was including home video rights. And when they were initially purchased, it was assumed that they were going to be the ones to release the uncut Martyrs on Blu-ray in North America. Now, part of the reason I'm doing this video is because that has still never happened. No company has done this, and it's in dire need of being done. I scoured the internet. I find no credible rumors that it's going to happen. But in 2015, the belief was that Anchor Bay, whose reputation had which was once great, they changed everything. They changed this whole landscape of cult cinema on home video. Totally, they are key figures, and the men who worked the hardest for them, Bill Lustig and the late Jay Douglas, and of course David Gregory, who now owns Severin Films. They're indispensable to any conversation like this, to this channel existing. Really, there wouldn't be a Blue Review. I wouldn't be here with the experiences I've had in film, specifically in cult film, if not for Anchor Bay and those gentlemen. So, and I knew 2 of them personally, and not well, but conversationally. And I knew from the beginning what they were doing was very special, not just from their slate of titles, which was staggering, but from the way the passion that they spoke to me over the phone with about these things. So Anchor Bay kind of slacked off, though, after Blue Underground and Severin splintered off. Anchor Bay, they kept recycling every other month a new edition of Halloween or Army of Darkness, or a property they had purchased early in their existence that helped, that by its lucrative nature would help bankroll much more obscure films. And they finally released the Mario Bava box set years after it had been announced, and it was really nice on DVD. By that time, the Blu-rays were on the way from Kino, and but it was still an exciting, endeavor. And they released the Jodorowsky movies. They had been working on those from the beginning. They finally came out on DVD on Anchor Bay, and now they had passed out of print. I believe they're out of print. I sold mine when the Arrow box set, which I did an unboxing for on this channel, but not as part of the Blue Review series, prior to Blue Review. When that came out, I sold my Anchor Bay Jodorowskys. But by 2015, they're really doing a lot of original work and a lot of work with Starz, the network they were affiliated with. And Starz always seemed kind of like a cheap Cinemax to me. I don't know, maybe I don't know enough about it, but a lot of their, the 2 companies were woven together. Starz predates Anchor Bay. I don't really know when Anchor Bay started and why they were called Anchor Bay. It has something to do with where they were located geographically, but I'm kind of bad on certain parts of the country geographically, so I don't know where Anchor Bay is. Is it in Michigan, Maine? I don't know. Somewhere up there where there's a coast and there's water and there's a boat, and they had the little, logo with it depicted. But I do know that when Lustig, Douglas, and Gregory came on board, around 1997, 96, 97, and began releasing materials in 97 on videotape, and already in the newly commercially introduced medium of DVD. you know, they began releasing those titles, that put Anchor Bay on the map, at least as far as with people like me who were collecting this kind of stuff and into this kind of film. And then it just went from there. So flash forward almost 20 years, and so you're thinking, well, some of us were thinking, I didn't know at the time, so I can't include myself. But from forums that I have surveyed via the Wayback Machines and the interwebs, there was excitement that, well, Anchor Bay, well, okay, they're going to put out Martyrs uncut, oh motherfucker, on Blu-ray. Well, no, it was the remake. They actually produced the remake, so they had purchased rights and they used them. It's like using your powers for evil. I mean, what a disappointment. Anyway, I'll get back to the remake later. Let's talk about the original. So, after our initial scene, we jump 15 years ahead, and we follow a new figure, a woman, and like I said in the last video, when I first saw it, I kind of assumed it was Lucy, the little girl. I didn't know her name then, but same little girl who had escaped from these faceless tormentors. So yeah, it is her, and I have my cheat notes here. We're going to pick back up with those just to give you some tidbits here. I like giving credit where credit's due. So as I mentioned before, Mylan Jampanois, I couldn't pronounce her name in the last video either, last installment. She plays Lucy. So Lucy, as an adult, breaks into this house. First you see this kind of suburban French family, kind of a father knows best for the millennium kind of situation. It's kind of like a bad sitcom. They poke fun at each other, they rib each other, as us Americans would say, and they're just kind of embarrassingly happy. As they get ready, the kids are getting ready for school and talking about where they're going to college, the older kid, and it's just a mile a minute of just nonstop hijinks and yucks, and I mean. It's not really played that way. It is in the remake, very literally, because apparently the people who wrote the remake didn't realize that Pascal was obviously parodying those kind of scenarios from movies and TV shows, where American French or wherever. But Pascal is not beating you over the head with a hammer yet. He's just basically portraying this scenario. You can draw your own conclusions, as I've stated. So into this domestic bliss of the nuclear family comes raging this woman, in a coat, brandishing a shotgun, and she literally blows the fucking father away. The gore in this movie, of course, is extremely realistic and plentiful. This is the first of it. It's fast and it's powerful. It's remorseless. It's not sentimentalized, it's not melodramatic, there's no extraneous dialogue, all of which unfortunately are employed in the remakes version of these scenes. She shoots the mother, whose name we later find out is Gabrielle. In the credits, these people are just credited as their La Mère and La Père. So Patricia Toulon plays La Mère, or Gabrielle, and her name to me is an important plot point. It was not in the remake, and not a crucial plot point, but important nonetheless. She herself, well, I'll get into that. Anyway, so the daughter runs upstairs, hides under the bed. The son is in the kitchen, and he tries to get away, and you think he's going to try to play hero, but he doesn't. He's terrified. And then the woman asks him how old he is, and he tells her, and she's like, "You knew, didn't you?" And his expression is hard to divine. And then she blasts him in the chest with a shotgun, and that takes care of him. Goes upstairs, finds the young, well, doesn't see the young girl under the bed, just hears her under the bed. Gets up on the bed and aims the shotgun where she hears the whimpering coming from and blasts. And that's not as graphic, but still, boom, she's gone. So Lucy has now destroyed this family. So she calls her best friend Anna. So Anna and her have been friends since childhood, apparently, and this is kind of gradually pieced together as the movie goes on through dialogue and some quick flashbacks. In the remake, it's all spelled out for you in brand new material written specifically for the remake, in detailed, lengthy, and extraordinarily boring and poorly acted flashbacks. Just vile filmmaking, just trash. Sorry, I just can't mince words. When you're trying to approach something that achieves what Martyrs does, which I'll make clear more so hopefully as I go on, you best be bringing your A game, man. And they brought like a Z fucking game. Oh, Anchor Bay. What the hell, man? So yeah, Anna comes and she's like, I found them. So what we eventually pieced together is that these are people who had tormented young Lucy that we saw. That's who Lucy escaped from. We never saw any hint or clue of either of those La Mère, La Père personages in that opening sequence. You never saw really her tormentors. You just saw her escape. Later, some of this is shown in a brief flashback, and there's a lot of clarity. And that clarity, once it's driven home, creates an incredible amount of angst and sorrow and crisis internally for the character of Anna. So Anna was also apparently an abused child, and they met in some kind of convent or whatever. The remake goes on and on about the religious aspects in the convent, I guess because they're trying to play up the traditional ideas of what martyrs means, which the original doesn't give a fuck. It doesn't beat you over the head with the religious iconography. The tormentors nor the victims are at all religious. Possibly the tormentors worship some kind of Moloch-like being, but we're never, given any indication of that. Their real life, people in real life who've been accused of such things have been accused of worshiping Moloch from the Bible, but, or Satan, of course, but that's an easy go-to. Essentially, Anna and Lucy bonded, and Anna was kind of Lucy's tether to sanity. Lucy was always mentally ill as a result of her torment. I'm going to put this on hold for 1 second, and I'll be back with the rest. And I have returned. So yes, they meet, and most of this is just, again, in the original is inferred and discussed. And essentially, it's an emotional thread that the people who did the remake felt needed to be fleshed out and spelled out. Okay, I do get that. I do feel like the original takes a bit for granted in that area, but I feel the economy of the script paired with the power of the acting, because Madeleine, who plays Lucy, and let me get her name right, Morjana Aliou plays Anna, her especially. They are absolute fucking ferocious powerhouses of thespianism. So, it's staggering, really. And again, a movie that can never be made in Hollywood. I don't know if anyone could rise to this level of performance. It's the same idea as Spike Lee remaking Old Boy. How Josh Brolin's a good actor, but how he's no Choi Min-sik. He never can be. He never will be. Spike Lee's a good filmmaker, but he's not the kind of guy who can elicit a performance like Park Chan-wook can from his actors. So, anyway, I hear the specter of someone I used to talk to a lot on Facebook, who probably would be known to a lot of you if I mentioned him. He's kind of on the periphery of the film industry, and he said to me once, why do you have to, in praising something, slam something else in order to praise it? Why can't you just praise it? This is what I don't like about the internet discourse. And I'm like, it's not a matter of that I have to. I want to. I mean, I want to provide context. I want to make clear what side of the fence I'm on. It's not about the right to enjoy whatever you want. I assume that we all have that right. I wish the government did, but I assume we all have that right. But my right, part of my intrinsic right, is to call it as I see it. And if I feel like within a certain context, there are two things, and one is superior to the other vastly, or vastly inferior to the other, but within the same context, to me, that's part of the way I do criticism. I mean, that's part of the way I arrive at a lot of my, well, I should say convey a lot of my points, as I'm sure you guys have noticed, and a lot of you might agree with this dude I'm alluding to, that it's not the best way to go about it. But I disagree. I disagree with his assessment, and I bring up how weak Hollywood films are when I compare them to films like this and like Martyrs or Old Boy. I do it to make a point. It's to say that most mainstream people are brainwashed by the media into believing Hollywood is cinema, is cinematic art, and it's not. It's not at all. There are instances, many, of cinematic art made by Hollywood over 100 plus years, but that's not what Hollywood represents. That's not what American mainstream, widely distributed, wide release, multiplex driven cinema is about. It's about money. It's about money, 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 money. I love the MCU because I grew up on Marvel. I don't love all of the MCU, though. I don't love them uncritically. That's the subject for another video. Because my view of them actually is lessening as time goes by. And a lot of it's because the decisions they make that are commercial over aesthetic turn me off. So I can't embrace them wholeheartedly. Some people might feel the same way about Star Trek. I don't particularly think the new Star Trek is coming from that direction, where it's just motivated by commercialism and trendiness. I don't believe that, but a lot of people do, and if they're familiar with or invested in the original Star Trek, it's their right to assess that, and that's cool. I feel the same way about Marvel. So Hollywood, especially when they attempt remakes of this nature, and I wouldn't put Anchor Bay, the producers of the Martyrs remake, under the rubric Hollywood per se, but they're obviously Hollywood adjacent. And I think it's moves like a crass, cynical remake of a brilliant transgressive film that increases their commonalities with Hollywood and its motives, which, like I said, are purely financial, really. So I have no idea where I was. All right, take it easy. See you next time. No, so Lucy's massacred this family, and Anna comes, and she wasn't quite expecting this. And she's very distressed. She's obviously a really humane and empathetic person, values human life. So she just thinks, if you're going to do this, well, A, should you go to this extreme? Maybe we should call the police. B, if you're going to do this, you need to have incontrovertible evidence. Now, this is conveyed, as I've stated, and again, I'm comparing this with the remake is a very convenient way to help me review this movie, because it helps me tell you what the original did right. I mean, I can tell you that anyway, but the remake makes all the wrong decisions. narratively about how to handle this brilliant scenario. Uh, it didn't learn anything from the original. It didn't expand or bring anything novel to the experience, and few remakes do. And especially ones, like I said, motivated by Kaching. And I mean, I don't know why a Martyrs remake would be motivated by Kaching, but then again, yes, I do. You know, you're kind of trying to suck. You're trying to suck a little bit of what you can from the notoriety or infamy of a brand name. So if Martyrs is a controversial film and that's touted all over the interwebs worldwide, it doesn't matter if, you know, a tiny fraction of the people who have heard of it will ever see it or want to see it. Anchor Bay goes, well, Martyrs, it is known as this. It has an infamy. It has a name in the marketplace. Same with Old Boy. Same with Vampires with a Y. There was an equally cynical, poor remake of Vampires by Jose Larraz, which I've also reviewed on this channel before. I love the original. The remake came out in 2015, the same year as the Martyrs remake, and it was garbage. You know, it was needless. It wasn't as needless as the other two examples. But then, you know, Vampires by Larraz is not, to me, of the stature of film mastery of Old Boy or Martyrs. And here come the Larraz fans with their torches. You motherfucker. Symptoms of Citizen Kane of Spanish horror. No, I'm joking. I love Larraz. I think he's done some very weak movies like Black Candles. But, you know, he's done some great work. And I love Spanish horror of that year, as anyone knows who's been following me talking endlessly about Jorge Grau and Eloy de la Iglesia on this channel for months. I love Larraz, but I feel as though Larraz's Vampires was, in its time, exploitation cinema. Old Boy and Martyrs, to me, are art cinema utilizing exploitation tropes. And, you know, therefore they're kind of crossovers. Vampires really didn't use art house tropes of its time, you know. But it is a well-crafted and effective movie, and it's very erotic. I'm not into lesbian vampires like 99% of male, ostensibly heterosexual males I know are. But there were even shots that turned me on. I mean, you know, I'll just be blunt. I think the ferocity of the eroticism is powerful, and melding that with the ferocity of vampirism, which often was not really shown that much up to that time. You know, the sheer ferocity of, hey, I'm opening veins and consuming someone's blood and they're dying. You know, that was a powerful, powerful thing. And that's why I think one of the many reasons I think that's an incredible movie, but I think that's what it's known for, is that melding. It's kind of the perfect adult lesbian vampire movie. It's not porn. It is like softcore porn though, at times. Okay, so I'm going on another tangent here. But the Martyrs. So Anna's Lucy's friend, and she helps her get rid of these bodies. And Anna really does most of the work because Lucy is freaking out. See, Lucy keeps seeing this monster. And this is this kind of distorted, naked creature with huge strands of nasty matted hair and apparently female, and kind of reminds me of some of the Samara-like creations from Japanese cinema that have also kind of become cliche with the long black hair and images of these kind of beings, like in what's the other movie? Some other movies that have that imagery. One Missed Call, I believe, is one. Is that one? Yeah, One Missed Call, but Pulse by Kiyoshi Kurosawa have that kind of, you know, figure. From what little I know, I'm thinking that it's, you know, ultimately derived from Japanese folklore. I should know for sure, but I don't. I'm sorry. But it's become a trope of its own within non-Japanese horror. It's been appropriated. and this is kind of a riff on that kind of figure where you never clearly see the face, and it's, it's very there. There's a figure like this who lies at the core of the movie Wreck as we get close to the end. This being is in Martyrs is more like the one in Wreck, where just definitely naked and very emaciated, distorted, and looks like it has been tortured. I mean, and the first time you watch this movie, you're wondering, so is this creature real? So Lucy apparently has been seeing this creature for many years, and she's seeing it now, and she's begging it to go away because she tells it that I've done what you ask of me. I've killed them. I've taken care of it. I've ended your torment. So it doesn't take a lot of time before it becomes obvious. Again, we go into that fight against literalism, that this is in her mind. And finally, the sad thing is, it takes all the way until, see, Lucy's a cutter. Lucy mutilates herself to deal with this ton of trauma. Now that's a pretty realistic take on this subject matter, but she ascribes the clawing and it to being clawed and scratched by this creature, this tormented being. Even managed to reach around and cut her own back. Though if you're seeing from her point of view, it's on her back, clawing her back, digging into her flesh. And Anna helps her with the wounds. It seems like every time Anna turns around, this creature's clawing her, which is really Lucy hurting herself. And Anna knows the creature's not there. And but in between, Anna's trying to figure out what the fuck to do, and she loves her friend. She wants to believe her friend. She's not thrilled that what's happened, but she's going to help bury the bodies. At Lucy's insistence, she's not going to call the police. She's going to go with the idea that they're never going to believe her. And Lucy doesn't think Anna believes her. And watching it, I think Anna wants to believe her. I think Anna kind of believes her, but she doesn't have the severity of what's happened to Lucy in her face. Despite being abused herself as a child, she wasn't subjected to this experience, this extreme experience. And nor did she do the relentless years of detective work that Lucy did. And she just was kind of an informed friend, like, I'll be there whenever you need me, I love you, but, wish you luck, and she wants Lucy to have peace, not be like mutilating herself all the time and talking to this invisible to her creature. And when things kind of turn a corner is when you find out that the mother is not dead. The mother's gravely wounded. The mother's body is in the shower with the daughter who is dead. And it's at that point that Anna realizes the mother is living. And she basically tells her to be quiet. She's going to help her, I guess, escape or get medical help. Again, it's a very economical script, but that is an advantage of it. Lucy is grappling with the creature in the meantime and kind of just generally losing her mind, I guess, trying to understand why is this creature still assailing her when she has done this act of karmic retribution. And so it's not long, though, before Lucy sees that this woman is alive and that Anna is protecting her, more or less, from Lucy's wrath, from finishing her off. But not letting Lucy know this. But Lucy finds out, and Lucy, of course, just smashes her head repeatedly until her skull's just, a cavity, a crater. And before she was discovered, though, Anna asked the woman what her name was, and she said it was Gabrielle. So I stated in the earlier video that was an important plot point. It was important to me anyway, because around the time, the way it shifts back and forth between Lucy's torment and Anna trying to deal with this barely living woman and reconcile her feelings about all this, which she still obviously hasn't, but she still has the impulse to help this woman who's seemingly helpless. There is a flashback in which you see Lucy as she was in the beginning, same young actress, and she is being tormented by Gabrielle, and it's clearly her. And she manages to evade Gabrielle and escape, and that's how she goes out into the world and running, and never look back, which we saw at the beginning of the film. So we didn't see how she escaped. Now we do. So we, the audience, know conclusively, regardless of what Anna thinks, that Lucy found the right people. Now, are all the questions answered exactly? Did the kids know? It's strongly implied that the son knew. I will say in the remake, it's more all but spelled out that the son knew, which I thought was one of the only, if not the only, bold, step forward that the remake took. So Lucy finishes off Gabrielle, and Lucy finishes off herself. She can't take it anymore, and she slits her throat open with a blade after cutting herself more and jumping through a window and etc. Anna trying to help her, and Anna's basically like, I got to bury these people, and I got to save my friend. And she's very earnest. This actress is truly amazing, and she doesn't treat Lucy with condescension, but Lucy is paranoid that Anna doesn't believe her. It's important, or it's imperative to her that her friend believe her, because this is suffering that she endured alone, and as much empathy as Anna has with her, she didn't go through this. But, so this is where the movie takes a sharp turn into where it's going to go, which is we see from Anna's point of view that the creature is indeed not there, and Lucy ends her own life. Then Anna goes exploring the house, and she finds basically an underground base, very metallic, very cold and austere, very complex maze of rooms. And this is where the tortures were done. This is probably where she escaped from when she was a kid. The suburban house. I don't know if it's made clear completely. I could be wrong. See, again, there's some things that I'm not 100% sure of. That could be just me, not the ambiguity of the film. Maybe I'm slow in the uptake on a couple of things, but I got the impression that not only did the torture of young Lucy take place in the same place that this family lives, underground, but that the remainder of the entire movie takes place underground in the same place. There is a period where it's possible that these people take Anna to somewhere else, another base, but I think it seems likely that they're still there in the same place. I guess it's clear at the end when all these limousines converge on the house. But I didn't pay close enough attention to see if it was exactly the same house. So maybe you guys can help me with this. I'm not sure about that part. But the point is regardless of where the main tortures took and will take place, there is such a place underneath these people's suburban bliss home and blissful suburban home. So the point is now made powerfully to us and to Anna when she sees these corridors and there's these graphics of people having been tortured, including the Chinese woman I mentioned from the Boxer Rebellion in the last video, the graphic of her, and they're like on the wall. So obviously you're talking about a bunch of people who captured these kids and they fetishized torture, but it is deeper than that, at least to these people. As I've said before, they're looking for something transcendent. They want to create martyrs. And you soon find all this out for sure, because Anna is beaten up and captured by these people. They have come to the house. They've been trying to reach the family, and here they find, the family's dead, Lucy's dead, and these black-clad thuggish men, very GQ black-clad though, very dispassionately, dig some holes and just toss all the bodies, the family, Lucy, in it. Now, what I'm about to leave out, like a fool, I do this a lot, unfortunately, I'm sorry, is that the decisive scene where Anna realizes everything is totally real is when she finds another victim. And this victim obviously has been living or existing underneath, the Leave It to Beaver family for God knows how long. It has a metal plate stuck to her head, like nailed in and over her eyes, is mostly naked but shackled and is scarred all over, emaciated. This is some hard shit to watch. I mean, it's really fucked up. Her senses, you're not sure if she can hear or, well, she can't see with the thing over her face, and she doesn't know what's going on. She's terrified to be touched. So Anna does her best to, take the thing off her head, bolt by bolt, out of her skull, and, it's really some heavy shit. And that's when Anna knows, and she says to Lucy's, dead body, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. Well, she didn't say, I'm sorry I didn't believe you, but I think that is clear to assume that I'm sorry. Either I'm sorry I didn't believe you, or I'm sorry that I didn't give you the impression that I believed you, or I'm sorry that I didn't trust you enough to know how severe this was and that your actions were justified, really. That these people were monsters and that Gabrielle was not worth saving. Well, anyway, this very while again Anna's trying to bury everybody, and now she has to deal with this, crazed victim and trying to get the thing off her head, and the girl loses it and tries to mutilate herself and also to hurt Anna, and then is shot in the head, and that's when these thugs come in, and the leader of these the leader of these people who are cleaning up the operation and who take Anna captive after beating her up a bit is this woman they only call Mademoiselle, and Mademoiselle is this very aged woman played by an actress named Catherine Bagan, who I had heard of. She's kind of unrecognizable in this makeup, and she's wearing a black turban for some reason. They're all wearing all black. They're all and very clean and fastidious, and that contrasts heavily with the sordid things they do to these people, and so here the movie proper really begins, and in the sense that it shifts to Anna's story from Lucy's. So not only does Anna know Lucy was telling the truth all those years, she was telling the truth about that family, but now she's going to become a victim of the same people. So that's how the movie plays out from there. And but the Mademoiselle provides the exposition, and she shows Anna the pictures of real, as in our real life, torture victims, and this glazed look in their eyes as they're on the verge of death. And she's convinced that there's some kind of revelation there. And as I mentioned in the last video, I think there's an implication that the secret to immortality may lie there, or a secret to some kind of power over life and death, because these people already have obviously enormous wealth and influence. They probably control the government. They probably, they're capable of doing all this in total secrecy and never being caught for many years. And so this is when the setup shifts into, you don't just have these characters out on their own and the audience is kind of on our own, and we're trying to piece this together from these clues, and we don't know what's real and what's not. Now you see, yes, there is a true villain at work here. There is an evil, a human, banal evil that is behind all this, that is doing it for what they believe to be a more esoteric purpose than just getting their rocks off doing torture porn, you know. And that, of course, immediately then elevates the movie itself to another level that really most other torture porn films, maybe all, and really other French New Extremity films, which I'll get into in a sec, uh, rarely, if ever, venture. I've seen quite a few of the entries in the New French Extremity wave, so that was roughly like the late 1990s to the early 2010s, and this, of course, is a huge signpost, benchmark of the genre or subgenre or wave movement. I've seen quite a few, and to be honest, I have not enjoyed any of them. If enjoyed's the right word. I have not liked any of them as much as Martyrs. I don't think any of them are nearly as good as Martyrs. I think some are very well made. I think some do have some powerful gore and violent scenes and some interesting premises, but uh, they lack a certain depth and they have a certain predictability at times in tropes that they've just basically stolen from American horror films, especially slasher films. A lot of cliches that they kind of reinvent with, you know, beauty in a way that's kind of French, and it's more artsy, more beautifully shot, better effects, but a lot of the same stupid plot points. And movies that are guilty of this, I think, are Haute Tension or High Tension. Uh, that is one that comes to mind immediately, and I finally watched that all the way through for the first time ever, very recently, around the same time I rewatched Martyrs. So within the last 2 weeks. Another that comes to mind is Inside or L'Intérieur, which also had an American remake, which I started watching and it was unwatchable. I had to turn it off. I didn't really like Inside. Now, a lot of people swear by it. There's a local critic I know pretty well. He loves Inside. He loves all the movies of that wave. Um, Inside is definitely a cult favorite of followers of that wave. And I like Beatrice Dahl. I think I like her in general, and I think she's a very effective psycho villain in Inside, but I don't really like any of the other characters. The movie's riddled with implausibilities and a lot of cliches where you're screaming at the screen, you know, stop being so fucking stupid to the characters, just as you would in a slasher movie, even a good slasher movie, you know, and there have been quite a few good slasher movies, but a lot of times the characters are idiots, and you know, Inside perpetuated a lot of those kind of just frustrating, illogical tropes, and Martyr sidesteps all of that. You don't have to deal with all that. No one's stalking anyone. They don't have to. They've got Anna. They've already got her. You know, and they can only go downhill from here. There's no savior. There's no escaping. It takes her a while before she has recovered enough from what she's experienced at the house, the upstairs, to begin to try to be cognizant enough to fight back a little bit downstairs, but it's ultimately useless. You know, the guys beat her, these thuggish dudes beat the shit out of her all the time. There's not a lot of what I said earlier of this, like, very sadistic, slow, graphic torture, like in, say, Grotesque, or that was done to the real Chinese woman in the Boxer Rebellion. You know, there's none of this kind of CIA interrogation technique level of activity. That was a book, by the way, which was very graphic description of ways to torture an enemy. And, you know, I'm surprised it hasn't been made into a movie. But I think it's advanced interrogation techniques or whatever. But anyway, it was pretty infamous for a while. It's one of the first texts of this kind that I encountered around the same time I read Octave Mirbeau's Torture Garden. So there's not that. I mean, she's beaten, she's given the bare minimum of gruel like food just to stay alive, and just a minimum of water She relieves herself in a bucket under the chair, and it's empty. And they keep everything all clean and austere, you know, even though they don't really. Occasionally, they bathe her very roughly, and you know, they slap her and beat her if she doesn't want to eat or doesn't want to be bathed. And the guy comes in like daily and punches her, so she's, you know, her whole body's riddled with bruises and cuts and abrasions. But they haven't like chopped off any limbs, you know, or they haven't chopped off any fingers, or began to skin her, or done any of this really nasty kind of deep torture shit. The first time I saw the movie, I was like, oh, it's kind of wild. I thought this movie would be nonstop with this, but it's really old school torture up to that point, where it's like slow and insidious. Like you're captured, you're abused, you're barely kept alive, you're unhealthy, you're unclean, you know, you're beaten, you're in pain, but you're still intact. You know, most torture porn movies, you know, there's some kind of dismemberment going on all the time. And mutilation. There comes the mutilation anxiety I alluded to earlier. So I didn't really have any because there really wasn't any. But when it comes, it's beyond the pale. And essentially, they get her to the point where this one woman who's been feeding her, who's been, you know, very cruel and harsh to her, finally kind of bathes her and is a little gentle with her and feeds her some of the gruel. And she seems to have a little concern for her. And she says, okay. She's like, it's okay. The last stage is about to begin. It'll all be over. Now, of course, is that hope for Anna? Does Anna understand what this means? No. Does the audience understand? No, but they will. You will, and it's not pleasant. They're preparing her for the final stage, and this is, you know, it has to be gruesome because that's what the Mademoiselle showed Anna, that the kind of experiences that created martyrs, these beings that they believe see into the beyond, and they want one that they can keep alive to where they can relate what they see. And they've come close. I think they say 4 times they've had, and they say that they're the victims that usually work the best are young women. So, you know, yeah, women in their 20s, like these characters. And, you know, so again, at later points, you do get more exposition from the Mademoiselle and from some of those supporting characters. I wouldn't say there's any compassion. There is a slight bit of sanity and, you know, calm in the proceedings, but, you know, it's dispassionate. We can't mistake it for humanity because these people may, the reason they care whether Anna lives or dies is not because they care about Anna being in pain or living or dying. It's because they're so close to their breakthrough. That's what they're in love with. That's what they're excited about. And that's what you start to see unravel when they take Anna into the last step. They put her on this big device, like a wheel with all these metal bars. And they cut her clothing off, and you know, you usually never see the heads of the people who feed her or the doctors. Like you see the guy who beats her up, and then you see the woman who feeds her. You see their faces, and that woman talks. But it's usually very cold and impersonal. And the whole section where she's slowly broken down is like vignettes, and they'll be kind of brief. Rarely, if ever, any dialogue. She does say, "I miss you" to Lucy one time. But they kind of come and go in this vignette-like fashion, like a fade in, fade out to black, and then another one. And then after several of these vignettes, we're at that point where you get the exposition that here we are, we're on the verge of this. So they shackle her to this big device, face down, and they don't show what is being done to her, but they strongly imply from the positioning of things that she's being cut in the back and probably, you know, having some flesh cut away, maybe the beginnings of being skinned alive. And at that point, you start to see you go into her eyes, and that's going to go from there. The eyes, because that's kind of what was important to these people, is the look in these people's eyes when they're on the verge of death. Um, so when we shift, now we're from the point of view of the tormentors. So that seemingly concerned doctor is like reporting everything to Mademoiselle, and they're making an announcement that someone has survived the final stage, and they're keeping her alive, and they're going to hopefully she will speak. And they invite all their friends. They invite all of the ghouls. So all these rich people come, and it's like it's like they're all attending the opera or something, and they're watching. So our girl here has been wheeled out in a wheelchair, covered in cloth. All you see is her calves and feet from a distance, and you see that the muscles and nerves are exposed, and the cloth is a little bloody. So that's when it's to Mademoiselle's satisfaction. So when next we see Anna, we see the extent of it, and basically she has, well, in that scene you do too, but actually you do, yes. She's been completely flinched, I think used to be the word, skinned alive. She has no breasts, for instance. All of her muscles are exposed. She's just like the character Frank from Hellraiser, or the woman in Hellbound Hellraiser 2. Completely skinned alive. Her face, though, is intact here, up to around here. I guess so. She can speak when she sees things. I don't know, no damage is maybe going to be done to her eyes or any of this kind of area. But it's a really gross thing. It really disgusted me the first time I watched it. It's still rather hard to look at. The effects are immaculately realistic. And yeah, just this part of her face is the way it was. And then everything's gone, her scalp, all of it. And she can't really stand up, obviously. I mean, she can move. She still has muscles, like when they need her to move her leg to get out of the wheelchair or whatever. But then they put her in another, they don't show them doing this, but we cut to her in another uh, thing, like a tank of water or some kind of fluid. Some kind of fluid, I guess, that's going to cause her, not cause infection or cause minimal suffering. I don't know, keep her from bleeding too much. And her face, the part of her that's kind of still looks like it did, it's kind of just breaking the surface of the water. And her eyes are starting to dilate, and we're starting to see into her eyes, and it is like a cosmic kind of effect. And so they take Mademoiselle to her, and she whispers something to her, and it seems like it's a few sentences. You can't make it out from her reading her lips. There's no subtitles or any sound for it. And so then the next phase is going to be revealing what she said to this assembled throng of maniacs. And, one of her attendants, I forgot his name, minor character, dapper old man, and all, black suit. And he knocks and he's like, "Is everything okay, Mademoiselle?" And she's like, "Do you ever, like, do you know what, lies beyond, what she saw, basically?" Um, and he's like, basically, like, no, I don't, he doesn't put it this way, but like, no, I don't pretend to know, I don't know for sure. And he's expecting her to tell them what was relayed. And at this point, as far as you know, Anna's still alive, just kind of in that tank. And she says to him to the door, keep on doubting. Uh, And we've seen her. She had a gun with her before, and she takes it, puts it in her mouth, blows her head off, and it's very sudden, and then she's dead. First time I watched the movie, I felt cheated. I was like, I wanted them to torture her. I wanted some karmic justice, man. Um, but watching it again, I think it's powerful. I think, yes, again, minimalism wins the day, and the conclusion that I come to, and I've read some different people interpreting the meaning of the movie. One was that it was this incredible paradise beyond, and so the woman was in a hurry to get there. But the more common interpretation, and the one I hold generally, is that she was basically told there's nothing there. All this was for nothing. This whole project of decades of these old people's lives, these old fuckers putting all this, time and money and risking, uh, um, risking if there were any chance they'd ever get caught, they probably bought everybody off, was for naught. There is nothing, and it's purposeless, and so she kills herself. So her whole mission, her whole everything, it has been for nothing, and that's like the best revenge that Anna could give, uh, to avenge herself and Lucy and all the other girls that they tormented and killed. And Anna is probably not in her right mind enough to make up that kind of shit just to hurt the woman. I mean, it's a nice byproduct that it does, and we see it as just. We meaning the audience. I did anyway. We see that as karmic. But in other words, I don't believe that Anna's lying to her just to like, yeah, fuck you, old hags for nothing. I believe she's telling her. Now, is Anna glad that she's telling her? Possibly. And the part of Anna's mind that's still Anna, the part of her that's still in some way tethered to the earth, not completely out there in the beyond, maybe. And we don't see Anna die. But yeah, it's pretty heavy. The music in this movie is really incredible too. I forgot the name of the composer. I'm running way over along with this. I apologize. Um, but yeah, damn it, I want to see the music at quick glance here because it was really, really above average and really, really nice. Wikipedia's begging me for money. Music by Seppuku Paradigm. I guess that's a band. Great name for a band. Seppuku or Harakiri Suicide Paradigm. Suicide Paradigm sounds cool too. I should have remembered that. This movie opened at the Cannes Film Festival actually in May of 2008. I've forgotten that. Really, it's by the end, I was exhausted. It was powerful. I actually didn't finish it in one sitting, which is nothing new for me, and I had seen it before, but I deliberately staggered like the last couple of scenes because I really felt like, I was getting there and I was really involved in it, and then I was like, I don't know if I can go right into this skin to live thing. So the next day, I started watching from, around the time that we get her ready for the final stage. So all at once they do the horrible, horrible, horrible torture porn stuff, and you don't see it on camera happening, but you definitely see the results, and it's horrendous. It's truly, at that point you'd be like, yes, please kill me, you know. The movie ends with these kind of it looks like home movies shot on Super 8 or something of what seemed to be Anna and Lucy playing as children and happy. And the little girls really kind of resemble the adult actresses. The actress Arjana, is that her name, who plays Anna, uh, Arjana, Morjana Alui. She looks Asiatic or possibly Arabic Middle Eastern. Definitely doesn't look just like an average Caucasian French person. Um, the actress who plays Lucy is more Caucasian appearance. Um, Morjana has a very exotic look. She's very beautiful, and she's a hell of an actress. She just every note she hits is perfect to me. Um, I think this is a masterpiece. This is the third time I've seen it, and this is my final for now. Final verdict is that it's unimpeachable, unassailable. It's not a movie I could watch very often, but I do think it's a movie I could revisit more than I used to think I could. I don't think I could revisit it as much as other extreme movies uh, that I watch periodically, like Old Boy or Very Powerful, or even Cannibal Holocaust. I watch more regularly than I used to, not weekly or even monthly or anything scheduled, but I can handle it. Though the animal scenes as time goes by actually revolt me more than they used to, rather than less. Um, a Serbian film I can watch. I've seen like I think 6 times, and uh, every even the last time was a little hard going. So I have never seen the entire uncut Serbian film in a good print, beginning to end, with subtitles. So that's why I want to get that upgrade eventually. So I'll have as it was intended to be seen, and then it's like that might be the last time I ever watch it. But that movie does disturb me. Now this one it disturbed me too, but it was not so much disturbing to me as in disturbing like like nauseating. It was that, but it was more emotionally devastating. Martyrs, and I believe that lies in its execution. Now, uh, I don't want to go super epic lengths, so I'm just going to try to tie this off as quickly as possible. I've mentioned many things about the remake and how there's many missteps in the remake. I couldn't finish watching the remake this time. I watched it all the way through several months ago. The remake makes a few, beyond what I've already mentioned, remake makes several fatal missteps in the narrative and in the changes. And they go beyond just spelling out things that are implied, like the flashbacks of them meeting as children and all this stuff, and the details of Lucy's abuse at the, while she's at the convent. They talk about her abuse and what she went through, and they're trying to figure out what she, who did it, why they did it. None of that's in the original. But that's one thing. But actually changing things that are on camera, first thing is that in the remake, Anna definitely doesn't believe Lucy. And not only does she not believe her, she lectures her moralistically at length. And she's a terrible actress who I've actually seen in some other low budget movies. I forgot her name. She's god awful, very uninteresting actress. I mean, you have a very exotic and compelling looking woman like Morjana Alui, and then this woman looks like she wandered out of some fucking she's like a debutante who wandered out of a sorority party, and it's like aspiring to be a model, but just not quite generic enough looking, but almost. And I don't mean that as far as an aesthetic evaluation of her prettiness or beauty. I just mean she's not interesting looking, nor does she have an interesting voice, nor can she act, or her mannerisms are poor, and the movie's just poorly directed. It took 2 guys to direct this mess. And anyway, that was a crass change. And it's crasser because of the way it's delivered, because by the kind of actress they chose. So later, when you think she's sorry, it's like, are you though? she's a disingenuous character. The major change is that Lucy doesn't kill herself. Lucy and Anna are together till almost the end. So the whole dynamic of who sees what, mostly Anna's like a witness, you know? So Anna never really feels, I'm not saying Anna deserves to at all. She didn't. But what I said earlier, I meant in that she didn't experience this firsthand. So it didn't come across to her as powerfully as if she had. But then ironically, she takes Lucy's place and she does experience it herself. And it goes much further. And that's the switch off of the lead character. So that whole structure and idea to me are great. So they throw that out the window. And they leave Anna as this kind of shallow, vapid observer who's trying to help her friend. And Lucy is the one who keeps getting tortured. And Lucy sees the beyond. And they switch around who kills themselves and what's said by whom and how they die, and they both die on camera, and it's all super dramatic because they'll always have each other, and it kind of has this lesbian kind of thing to it, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, there's really none of that. Well, is there any of that in the original? I'm trying to think. I think Anna does kiss Lucy at some point in there after the family's dead. After she's trying to console her. I think she does kiss her on the mouth, and Lucy's just not into it. And I think maybe Anna is in love with Lucy, but that's not central to what is the story being told. It's just an accent on the story. It's an element, a possibility, which to me makes the characters even more, real and authentic. In the remake, there's not even as much, to me, overt lesbian hint as that one kiss, but the whole homoerotic aspect to it, it's played up more. The whole thing of them as kids, and it's a disaster. The remake is an absolute disaster as a movie in its own right, and as a remake, especially of this film. It's a lesson in how not to make a film, how not to remake a film, how not to rewrite a good script, how not to recast great actors. Just really one of the worst remakes I've ever seen. Easily in my top 5, maybe top 3 worst I've ever seen. So yeah, fuck the remake. Thanks for listening. I'm going to split now. I think each of these videos this is going to be over an hour, obviously. The other one's going to be right about at an hour. I don't know if I'm going to sew them together into one long video like I did with Venus and Furs or not. I'm not really sure. Not really sure. So I'm either going to having an epic length video like I did with Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, which was like, I think 2.5 hours and still only has like 100 views. Or it'll be a 2-parter. I mean, the Venus and Furs altogether is like an hour, both parts. So this will be pretty lengthy, and, I know y'all are probably sick of me by now. I'm sick of hearing myself talk by now. But I've enjoyed talking about this. Thanks for indulging me. If you're watching, if you did watch, if you're still a fan of my stuff after this, tirade, please subscribe. Please put a like. It really helps with the algorithm, etc., etc. Thanks to all my channel patrons. Thanks to my friends and supporters. And yeah, it's almost therapeutic talking out a movie like this. This is the kind of conversation I would have with some of my close friends who analyze films in this similar fashion. Films similar to this in this similar fashion, which is only like, I know 3 or 4 people like that. But instead, I'm giving y'all a monologue. So, let me know what you think. If you hate the movie, well, if you hate the movie, we just aren't going to talk. No, if you hate the videos, don't tell me, lie, because I'm very sensitive. No, I don't care. Comment. I'd love comments. Whatever. Thank you, and I will talk to you all soon. Love you.